Welcome, Notre Dame fans, to another edition of the Irish Breakdown Podcast. It's Sunday night, and so, of course, that means it is upon further review. And with me, as always, is my buddy, Coach Brian Driscoll, and we have spent the day.
Most of the day, yeah.
I was going to say most of the day because when the day started, we were still doing a show from last night.
That's right.
But we did get a little bit of shut eye. I coached some girls basketball, and then we broke down some film about can I just say that this was clearly the most joyous film to break down of the year? It was a skosh easier than the Marshall film and the Stanford film, and frankly, every other film that we got to break down this year. So, I just sat back and enjoyed it. To be honest with you, it was like watching your favorite movie again, like watching Top Gun or something. I was just like, oh, I remember that play. It was a joy to watch, and I will say, as scary as that sounds, some of it was better than what it was when I watched it in person, and that's hard to believe, frankly, Brian. And but it was great, and it was a good watch. Definitely saw some things I didn't see the first time around, which is why we do this in the first place. So your thoughts, and then we'll just kind of dive right in. Well, of course, we're going to do offense first because that's what we do, and then we'll talk defense and everything else.
You know, Vince, I think when the first thing I want to start off with offense is I think a big shout out needs to be given to the Notre Dame wide receivers from yesterday.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot made of their lack of production, and their lack of production has a lot more to do with the quarterback situation and just the way this team is running the football and just not having a lot of confidence in the quarterback to go out there and consistently make plays down the field. And we saw a little bit of that yesterday. Drew played gritty, he played tough.
Yeah.
He made some clutch plays, but there was still a lot of missed opportunities, which we'll get into a little bit later in the show. But they knew going into this game that they weren't going to get a ton of opportunities. Now, what I was told by a couple sources is that during the week of practice, there was the anticipation that they were going to throw the football on a little bit on Saturday. Not like a ton, but it was going to be a part of their game plan. They wanted to tack down the field because Clemson's very weak in the secondary. But once you got to game day and the wind was what it was, they knew it was going to be part of it. And they went out knowing they weren't going to be part of the game plan, and they blocked their butts off in this game. Jaden Thomas blocked his butt off. I thought that Tobias Merriweather blocked his butt off. I thought Braden Lindsey blocked his butt off. On the play where Michael Mayer got flipped upside down, Tobias Merriweather drove his dude into the end zone on a block. This is a 185-pound freshman. Right? Drove his dude into the end zone. Yeah. And I also thought that there was, Ryan and I were talking about this earlier. There was four, because I have a theory, and this is not at all meant to be a shot at Drew Pine, because who knows? It could be Drew Pine that becomes that guy. But if Notre Dame just had good quarterback play right now, if they just had CJ Stroud or Bryce Young or Hendon Hooker, if they just had that guy. No, I'm not talking about that. If they just had a good quarterback, they would destroy people. They would have beat Clemson by 40 last night because there was a lot of opportunities. There was Clemson just lined up in 0 or 1, the whole cover 0 or cover 1. Cover 0 is when there's it's man across. Yep. It's just everybody's in man. They're going to put 7-8 guys in the box, depending on how many receivers they think Notre Dame's going to put out. Cover 1 is man across and single high safety. There was just plays where they were daring Notre Dame to throw the football. And in a lot of those plays, Vince, Notre Dame's guys were getting open. There was Jaden Thomas got open in the seam a couple times. Tobias Merriweather on one particular play had a corner on him, and he was playing cover. He was playing man, but he was a little bit off. And Tobias just torched him. And all it would have taken was a 3-step drop and let that sucker go and just never looked at him. That's where they are right now. And that's got to get better, right? By the time they play USC, it's going to have to get better. But right. The thing is, Drew avoided the big mistakes, and that was the good thing. But even with those guys not getting targets and not getting the football, it did not affect the other part of their game. And Coach Freeman had said, I can't remember if it was post-game or if it was during one of his meetings during the week. I think it was post-game, Vince, where he said, you know what? This was a game of everybody doing what they were asked to do to help us win this football game. And I think the receivers, no group better epitomizes that than the wideouts, because they were not being allowed to do the thing that wideouts are supposed to do more than anything else, which is catch the football and be targets. and they played their butts off, Vince. They owned their role for Saturday, and I guarantee you that they didn't like it, meaning they want the football.
Of course
but
they do.
Hey, if this is what we got to do to win, bet we got that. It says a lot about their faith in Chancey Stuckey. It says a lot about their faith in Marcus Freeman, and it says a lot about their ability to go out and make plays. And again, I would like to see more RPOs. I'd like to see a lot of other things, but that's not. We've talked enough about that. That just add that into every breakdown. I don't want to keep repeating myself, but for what they were asked to do, Vince, I thought they played at an incredibly high level in the run game, blocked their butts off, and that played a big role in the success the running backs had on Saturday.
Sure. Oh, absolutely. Because whenever a running back would bounce one or a play was meant to go outside, they had blocking in front of them. They weren't having to make guys miss at the line of scrimmage or 5 yards down the field. I mean, there was plenty of opportunities on the outside. And, one play in particular when, Drew Pine ended up scrambling for that 10-yard gain. Jaden Thomas was on the side that he scrambled to, and he was going out on a route, and he turned back to look for the football, and he saw that Drew Pine was scrambling, and he immediately locked onto his guy and just stalk blocked the crap out of that guy and allowed Drew Pine to get that 10-yard gain. If it wasn't for Jaden Thomas, that's not a 10-yard gain. Notre Dame doesn't get a first down, and they're not moving the chains.
Right.
And that's just a microcosm of what the wide receivers were doing, because you're absolutely right. And I will also say, I'll throw the tight ends in there from a in-space situation, because we'll probably talk more about tight ends when we talk about the offensive line. But in space, I thought the tight ends did a pretty good job blocking in space too. I mean, they were asked to be attached, I think, a little more often than not in this past game. But when they were in space, they did a good job of just breaking down, getting in the way, blocking guys where they needed to block guys. And the blocking was just really good. And that's the thing about blocking. And I think people understand this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Blocking is like 80% effort, 20%, fundamentals and things like that. Like, you have to want to be able to block somebody. And we've all seen what it looks like when wide receivers don't want to block. And we've all seen what it looks like when a running back doesn't want to block for another running back, or whatever, fill in the blank, right? We've seen what that looks like. I didn't see that yesterday from Notre Dame. It was a group effort. It was hey, this is what's going to win us this game. We're going to beat a top 4 team by blocking our butts off. And that's what they did. And the whole team feasted off of each other on that. And that's what a team is. And I know that sounds corny, but that's what a team is. And you feed off each other on that kind of
stuff. Especially in football, Vince. Especially in football.
100%.
There's no doubt.
Yeah.
Let's dive into the run game a little bit specifically, Vince, and talk about some of the things that we liked and some of the things that just really fueled what they did yesterday. And again, reason we wanted to start off with the receivers, because it truly was a group effort. Even things like Drew Pine pulling the ball in the red zone and getting into the end zone on the read zone, something that they were not expecting.
I wasn't expecting
I didn't know he had the ball.
I didn't either. I was watching Chris Tyree. I'm like, they ran Tyree up the middle again. Okay, whatever. We're going to live to see another down.
I was like, why is Chris Tyree stopping running?
Yeah,
he stopped running.
He turned around. He stopped running and turned around.
What's he looking at? And why aren't they tackling him?
I know.
You know what I mean? Like, I was so confused.
I was like, oh, Drew's scoring. Okay, got it.
Right. And why are they celebrating right now?
I know.
Chris got tackled 4 yards behind the line of scrimmage.
Oh, my gosh.
But it really was a group effort. And I want to begin with, this is meant to be an in-depth type of conversation. And I got to tell you, Vince, there was a lot of things in this game that I really liked and been very critical of Tommy Rees this year. And I hope that I don't have to be critical of him again. I hope that this is the beginning of things getting better. There were some things in the pass game that he did last night that I liked. We'll get into, but run game wise, Vince, what we have called for, right? What was the thing we've said? Hey, this is what you need to do. There needs to be more diversity, more creativity. One of my keys to the game we did on our show on Thursday that I then published on Saturday before the game was you need to protect the run game. What did that mean? And what that means is you can't just line up like they did against Syracuse and run duo all game, right? You just can't. It was so obvious where they were going. And what I thought against Clemson when I watched the game was like, dude, I was wrong. They just lined up and did the same thing that they really did against Syracuse, and they really didn't. It was a much more creative game plan where they did a lot of things to really give Clemson problems. And The first one formationally is they really did a nice job of mixing up the run game. Now, I didn't get through the whole game, as far as I was charting and then you're breaking down plays, but I got through the first couple series of the third quarter, and then they kind of got a little duo heavy late to run the clock out. Even then, it wasn't completely duo. But through the first 3 quarters, I have Notre Dame having run inside zone 8 times, and I have them running duo 11 times. And there was a lot of success there, Vince. I mean, I'm looking at inside zone, like I said, 8 times, and it was 8 times for 63 yards. And early on, duo wasn't really getting a lot. It was 3 yards, 3 yards, 4 yards, 13, 4, 5, 4, 2. And then that was what they did in the first half, but they kept at it. And I think because they were doing so much inside zone, so here's what was happening, and we'll drop a couple plays here in a little bit.
Nice.
So Notre Dame ran 8 duo plays in the first half and 8 inside zone plays in the first half. 8 and 8, perfect balance. They had an outside zone play. They ran power play twice. They ran G-Rap once, which went for 9 yards. And
that was beautiful.
So
I enjoyed that.
Here's what makes that interesting. There's a couple things I noticed about it. They were running inside zone and duo from the same running backs alignments and footwork. And so duo is a play that you want to have a tight end to the call side, right? And now what Notre Dame has been doing a lot this year is they've been having a tight end. We'll line up sometimes to the call side because it's down blocks. It's double team down blocks, and you have to have somebody to protect the edge. Whereas outside zone, you're stepping to the call. Duo, you're stepping away from the call. So if the call is right, the lineman on the right step inside. If inside zone is being run to the right, the call side lineman step to the right, okay? So on inside zone, a lot of times you'll run it to an open side, meaning no tight end, and you have to have your tight end backside to protect the edge because you're stepping away from the edge. And that means, and you're trying to cut back, you need that extra gap to protect backside. On duo, it's essentially the reverse of inside zone, essentially. It's not really, it's a different play, but like as far as where the gaps are, where the dangers are. So you have to put a tight end to that call side or figure out a way to get somebody over there. And that's why Notre Dame's been doing like that backside cross action, which I don't love.
They do. So they do. They love it.
They do, and it hasn't been overly effective. But here's some things that they did on Saturday night. They were running inside zone and duo from the same look. And so
you're going against duo, tendencies.
Yes.
Which is the key.
And so for Clemson, you're thinking they're going to run duo. And so you're thinking like they're going to run to this side. And next you know, it's an inside zone, and they're just Chris Tyree's cutting it back with nobody there.
Mm-hmm.
Because based on what it's looking like, it looked like it's going to hit a different way. And based on how Notre Dame lined up, it looked like it was going to hit a different way because they were lining up with an attached tight end, not an offset tight end. Now, based on where the attached tight end was going, Vince, it looked like they were going to run duo there, but instead they ran inside zone there. And so early on, Clemson was really flying downhill. If I talked about this, but Notre Dame was getting a push, but that's why, your first 2 inside zone carries were 5 and 3 yards. Your first 3 carries on duo were 3, 3, and 4 yards. But they were getting a push, but Clemson was flying downhill. And then all of a sudden, 9-yard inside zone, 8-yard inside zone, 14-yard inside zone, 10-yard inside zone, 3-yard inside zone, 11-yard inside zone. And then duo goes for 13, and then back to 4, 5, 4, 2. But then in the second half, they mixed up their looks, and they went 20 and 12 on your first 2 duo runs. If you remember, they started off that first drive backed up at the 5-yard line and bounced to duo. And so I really thought the balance of the run scheme, you had a pitch play in the second half, and the outside zone stuff wasn't overly effective, but it helped slow Clemson down. They went empty and ran a little just a little now screen to Chris Tyree. They did a couple things like that I thought, Vince, really helped them. It just slowed Clemson down, where Clemson could no longer just fly downhill like they were in the first half.
Right.
So I thought that was really fascinating, Vince, and I thought that played a big role. Go ahead, if you want to interject, feel free. Go for it.
No, I think that the going against the tendency thing is really what, because we talked about Tommy Rees's game plan and the plays that he was calling and all of that, and I think once you dive in a little bit deeper, it was actually better than I thought because of the points that you're making right now. you and I would sit up in the booth basically predicting each run play pretty much the whole year, right?
Right.
And pretty much since Tommy Rees has been offensive coordinator, if I'm being serious. So,
yeah.
But that wasn't the case in this particular game. He went against his tendencies. And so that takes self-scouting. So like they scouted themselves and they realized, okay, when we line up like this, we're doing this, and defenses clearly know it. So we're going to line up like this, and we're going to do the complete opposite. And it showed. That's why they were able to bounce so many of these runs. I shouldn't say bounce. That's why they were able to gain so much yards on these runs, because teams, Clemson specifically, was going with the tendency, and they were crashing to one side and they were going the other way. And it was like, there's nobody over here. I mean, and that's game planning, man. And that is like I said, going against what you normally do, had Clemson just guessing. And more often than not, they were guessing.
Slowed them down.
Yes. Exactly.
Here's another thing they did, Vince, and this is what I want to show. Another thing they did is they created extra gaps. And I thought that was really fascinating, like really creative. So I want to pull this up and show this. This is an example here of what I'm talking about. So this is a run that Notre Dame ran. This was a run that bounced. This was Logan Digg. This is a run that bounced. I'm going to show two different versions of this play. So as you can see here, because I want you to see the box. Look at this. 10 dudes right there in the box. Right? So what Notre Dame is saying, well, look, it's windy. We're not going to really be able to throw the ball the way we want to. So we got to figure some stuff out. So here's the center. Normally you have the one tight end, but they put both tight ends there, and then they brought a receiver down here on the edge. Right? So that was
because he's attached.
That's right.
Sorry.
That's right. So I know, right? Sorry, Greg McElroy. Hate to break it to you. But
you couldn't help it.
I know. I don't know who's the worst play-by-play guy, Greg McElroy or Robert Griffin III. They're both pretty bad. So here's the tight copy of this, Vince, because I want to get to this play next. So here's that same copy, right? I love this. So you've obviously got, here's the center, okay? So the center's there. You've got an inside shade here, 3 technique there. Obviously, this guy's in here. You have a stack backer, safety in the box. You can see how loaded this box is, right? So here's the thing. Notre Dame didn't necessarily block this play super well, okay? They blocked it okay, but they didn't block it super well. So you had a nice double team here. You're going to get a double team here. They're going to work back, and they're going to work up here. That's basically how this play is going to work. That's how duo works, right? And so what happens on this particular play is they don't get a great double team here from a finishing standpoint, Vince, because this guy ends up coming off the blocks. But Michael Mayer hit this dude. So he actually hit. So they came off a double team. They're double teaming this guy. Michael Mayer hit Mitchell Evans so hard that he sent Mitchell Evans back into the backside backer. Go watch the play. But anyway, but what happened was they got a great drive. They really drove that guy inside before he came off, right? They got a decent double team here. They ended up losing this guy late, Vince. But here's kind of what happened. So you had this going on here, and what they did was they pulled the guard. So it looked like a G-wrap play, but it was just duo bringing a backside guard. So by bringing this receiver down here, okay, they used the receiver to seal the backside edge, which meant they could block down here, block here, and then they'd have those gaps secured. So they'd have the A gap secured by the center, the B gap secured by the tackle, and then the receiver would protect the edge, the backside edge, right? And so what they did was, in this instance, Vince, is they created the extra edge, they created the extra gap. So you have the A gap here, B gap here, C gap there. Now you have a D gap with an attached guy. They get that double team, and then they brought Jarrett Patterson around this way. So now they went from having a number sort of like kind of even numbers. You have 1, 2, 3, 4 against 1, 2, 3, 4 with a guy here. So Notre Dame was able to then get even numbers play side.
The guy from the other side, yeah.
Right. And they did it by doing 3 things. 1, adding a second tight end here. So what they were doing in the past, Vince, is the tight end would be where Styles is. And then he'd bring him around that way.
Yeah.
And so it's the tight end that was that sort of that protect the bounce. So the tight end's coming around. So if they bounce the run, they have that tight end kind of working around, right? So what they did was they put the tight end here, and these two guys were basically responsible for setting the edge, and you created the extra gap. By putting the receiver here, you then could get him here. That's the third thing they did. So created the extra gap here with the tight end over. They protected the backside edge because this is a downhill run, Vince. And if the receiver's not there, this guy is down tight and he's crashing that hard and cleaning that up, right? But all Styles has to do is get in his way.
Yep.
Get in his way. That's it.
Just make sure he doesn't catch up to the back from behind. I mean, that's what you're doing.
And then the third thing they did is you brought Jarrett Patterson over to get numbers back. Really, really well-designed play. And so if y'all go back and watch this play live, and I really wish we could show live plays, Vince. I really, really do.
I know.
What you would find is that they were able to take a 10-man box and turn it into their advantage. Because if you look at what they did here, because this is sort of a balanced formation because there was a receiver backside. So you have two skill guys here, technically, and then a second skill guy there. So Clemson kind of treated this like sort of a, hey, let's get a number. So Clemson's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so Notre Dame said, okay, you're going to treat that as a balanced look. Then we're going to do this to get in an unbalanced alignment post snap.
Yep.
And it was a great call. I mean, great play design and great call. And then Estime read it perfectly. Estime comes off the ball, Vince. Or is this Logan Diggs? This is Logan Diggs, excuse me. He comes down and sees that the surface on the edge surface has been moved just blown inside. And he immediately comes here and he sees that this block wasn't great and he just bounces it and gets right behind Jarrett Patterson. And I thought it was incredibly well done. Incredibly well executed and incredibly well done.
Can you tell the chat when this play took place? There, I think some people want to look it up if you've got that handy.
So I can try to find it. Give me 1 second because I marked this down as a G-Rap play initially. And let me find
that's what it looks like
quick.
With Patterson coming around the edge.
It was the first play of the fourth series. So I believe this is in the second quarter. And they started the ball at their own 47-yard line. So first play of the fourth series. And then the next play, they ran duo and got 7 yards, right? So I actually wrote down at the time, Vince, G-Rap, because the way that they were blocking it looked like just a G-Rap, like an old G-Rap play.
You see Patterson coming around the corner.
Yeah. Right, but it looked like Patterson bounced it because the way it was blocked. And then when you break it down, you realize this is just a different way to get to duo, which I thought was really creative. So, Vince, that was one example of just, again, them being really creative and getting to saying, okay, if teams are going to play us with numbers, here's ways that we can do based on how Clemson lines up, because Clemson tried to line up, really, balanced early on and tried to, they thought their dudes were as good as Notre Dame's dudes. And they weren't.
And it allows you if you're Tommy Rees, it allows you to do what you want to do,
right?
But doing it in a creative way. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so that's where, and look, we've always said how smart Tommy is, X's and O's wise, right? And we know what he wants to do. The problem is it just felt like he was beating his head against a wall at times, and everybody else knew what he wanted to do too. This takes that concept and just adds what we like to call the fluff. It adds, the window dressing, and it also adds the schematic advantage, to use the term from our buddy Chuck Weiss. But it adds to that, but it allows Tommy to do what he wants to do, but in a better way, which I dig it, man. I wish it didn't take until week 8 to do all of that, or week 9 or whatever, to do that. But he did. And I hope I see more of that moving forward, because that's what you're trying to do all the time offensively, is you're trying to and defensively, you're trying to out leverage the other team. You're trying to win the numbers game, right? That's how the RPOs work. And we'll talk about this defensively, but that's how RPOs work. You want to go where the numbers aren't. Well, this provides numbers to make the defense wrong, essentially. And, when we talk about execution, the offense executed, which is fantastic.
So I'm going to do another thing that I thought they did, Vince, and Marcus Freeman talked a little bit about this after the game. And one of the things that they did in this game against Clemson is, again, Clemson is a team that's known for being a sign stealing operation. So one thing that Notre Dame did is we've been saying, what, ban the scan. And they did some ban the scan stuff, right? I mean, they did some scan stuff, excuse me, especially on third down, but it wasn't a ton. What they did was they lined up, they got in a huddle, and then they lined up. And this is what we've been calling for. When you just line up, call a play and line up, then you can motion and shift, and you don't give them time to respond.
Correct.
And Clemson's a team that likes to kind of get your tendencies. They see where you're lined up. They make their calls. And I thought this was a great job of knowing who your opponent is and going after your opponent. Because, Vince, what's been one of the criticisms we've had of Tommy Rees this year? It's like you're just running your stuff. It doesn't seem like you're really putting a lot of effort into what are they doing.
Right.
And that was not the case against Clemson.
Yes,
this was we're going right after the things they do. We're going to take advantage of things that they do. And they did a great job. And this next play is going to be an example of that. Go ahead, Vince.
And I was going to say that's also, and you're kind of going along the same line. That's why they were huddling and running to the line quickly.
Yeah.
So they didn't allow Clemson to get set up. So they know how Clemson operates defensively, right? And they know that Clemson likes to adjust based on your formations and how you do things. And when you're running the scan offense, that allows Clemson to do that. They totally went against what their tendency is. They huddled and they would quickly get to the line and they would just go.
What have we said? You've got to know your own tendencies if you want to make sure that and use them against the opponent. So here's an example of what we're talking about here. So this was the first play of the second half. Okay, Notre Dame is backed up at their own 5-yard line. So actually, I want to get the other play. There was 2 plays here. So just give me a second to do this here. Just let me pull this down because there was 2 looks because they did a pre-snap motion and I just put the post-snap movement in there. So just give me 1 second to put the pre-snap look in there. Okay. So this is the pre-snap look that Notre Dame gave Clemson here. Okay. So Notre Dame is in 12 personnel here. All right. So you've got Michael Mayer out wide. This is Michael Mayer right here. Okay. So he's out in a trips formation. So as you can see, Clemson's got their rover out here. They got their Mike here, their Will here, safety, corner. And then they've got their front. Okay. Again, pretty balanced front, right? So they just got the rover out there. So then at the snap, Notre Dame motions. They don't even motion. They shift Mayer across because a motion is you move. A shift is where you move and stop.
Then you set,
right?
You get set.
So they moved Michael Mayer over here to get back to what we said before, Vince, which is create that extra gap to the call side. And then after they motioned Mayer, they then brought Jaden Thomas back into a wing in a quick motion. So this play then looks like, let me get to that other look. This play gets to this. Does this look familiar? Right? So then what happens is he goes there. Right? And then he motions down. And now all of a sudden, it's starting to look a little bit familiar, right, Vince?
Back to what you were doing in the first
Now all of a sudden, exactly. It's exactly the play that we showed before.
Right.
But now you've gotten to it in a completely different way.
Exactly.
Okay. And so then what happens is Clemson lines up like this. Then this guy motions here, this guy motions here, and then the backer comes in. Okay. And then so what happens on this particular play is you ended up missing a block here. So, but you had a great double team here from Mitchell Evans and Michael Mayer. They blew Miles Murphy off the ball. They drove him back here. He ended up stopping here. So you reset the edge because what was happening a lot with these bounces is they wouldn't necessarily have all great blocks because again, Clemson's guys are pretty good too. But because they were winning on the edge, the linebackers and the inside guys were flowing into traffic and they couldn't get outside. So on this particular play, Vince, Zeke Corral does a great job here, but this double team here, they miss. And Tyler Davis actually slants across. He actually slants across. I think he went this way and got free. What happened was two things happened. And then Jaden Thomas motions here, and then he becomes the lead. So remember before, it was Jarrett Patterson that was the lead blocker.
They're just doing it with the
same concept, different way. You got to the same alignment with different pre-snap movements, and all of a sudden the thing happens. and you get outside. And then what happens is Logan Diggs again comes down, and then Logan Diggs actually sees Tyler Davis come free, and he immediately bounces. And there was nobody out there. Right. And it's about the easiest 20 yards he's gained. And it was great scheme, it was great design. It was smart not to go away from sort of the looks of, just line up and then scan and then get the call and then do this and then do that. Get in the huddle, line up, make your shift, make your motion, bam, you run the play, and Clemson doesn't have time to react.
Right.
And then it also requires some good blocking to happen, and it requires a great read from the running back. Mm-hmm. And that is something that we said the backs played well. After breaking down the film, Vince, I am not being hyperbolic at all when I say this. This was the best running back performance I've ever seen from Notre Dame backs as a unit. And it's not just the yards. It's the way they got those yards.
It was the
making guys in the miss. There was one particular play where Audric Estime is running duo. And the hole opens here. And the Clemson defensive back does a great job of getting off his block and bouncing back out into the gap that Audric, and on a dime, he cut back out into the hole. And you're like, dude, like, you can't teach that. Like, that's just a guy with great instincts. Logan Diggs had several great reads. Chris Tyree had great reads when he was in the game. Their patience, their decision-making, and their ability to get through tiny little holes, because that's what it's going to be like against Clemson. You're not going to blow Clemson off the ball like you do other teams. The holes were like this.
And there was one where
hitting it, man.
There was one where Logan Diggs kind of made his body go like this to get through the hole. And he did a great job of getting skinny and breaking an arm tackle at the same time, going through the hole. And the thing is, once you get through the hole, you're one tackle away. I mean, you get to that next level, and if things are being blocked correctly, you've blocked the linebackers and you've blocked the defensive line. You just need to make a safety miss or whatever. And I can tell you right now, on good authority, that the secondary for Clemson was utilizing the ice packs on the plane ride home, man, because they were getting absolutely run over. Now, they were making tackles, don't get me wrong, but they were getting absolutely punished by these running backs in this game, and it was great, man. It was great.
I would have had to pull a hamstring about the second quarter. About the second or third time Audric Estime would have trucked me, I'd have been like, oh, hammy.
Oh, gosh. Because they were taking the brunt of just Audric and Logan. And, we talked about this last night. There were times where Logan was running the ball, and it looked like Audric was running the ball.
I couldn't tell the difference.
That's how –
because
I mean, he was just running with such authority last night.
Right. It was really impressive, Vince.
Yeah.
And the thing, too, is about it, Vince, is it's not just that, I'm trying to think of the right way to say this. It's not just that, like, they ran with authority and the physicality, and they ran over defensive backs. I mean, there was a play that you and I talked about at the time, and I went back and watched it again. It was a short yardage play where a defensive tackle slanted into the hole. Peyton Page. I'm going to look up and see how big Peyton Page is. He was a highly ranked recruit. He was a big-time recruit coming out of high school.
Right?
He's a defensive tackle, I believe.
Okay.
Let me look. Yes, he's a defensive tackle. He is 6'4", 315 pounds. I'm going to tell you what Peyton Page was coming out of high school. He's a true freshman, so he's just a year younger than – no, I'm sorry. He's a sophomore. So he is in the same grade as Logan Diggs and Audric Estime. I believe it was Estime, but again, it all kind of blends together. Peyton Page was a top 100 recruit coming out of high school. He was the number 105 overall player according to the On3 consensus. He was ranked as the number 32 overall player in the country by ESPN and the number 54 overall player in the country by Rivals. He was actually ranked 94th in the country by the 247 composite. He slants into the hole, and Audric Estime sees him and just puts his shoulder in. This is about 1.5 yards behind the first down sticks, and he just bulls him past the line, past the first down sticks. Just ran the defensive tackle over. And so you look at that and say, boy, that's just great toughness and all that. And it was. But the thing that I was again, it's hard to see this when we're up top, way up top.
Yeah.
But when you pop in the film, you're like, they played a great physical game, but Vince, they played a great mental game too.
Mm-hmm.
Like the vision, the feel, the decision making, and all those type of things was just excellent.
Yeah.
Yep, I could not have been more impressed. Could not have been more impressed.
And there was no drop off, no matter who the running back in the game was. That was the best part. I mean, because usually you put a third down back in, or you got to give your guy a breather. I mean, you can't just, for example, you can't just ride Audric the entire game. You got to put somebody in. Usually there's a bit of a drop off. You're like, okay, well, they're not going to be able to do this, or they're not going to be able to do that. Not the case. Like, there was no drop off, no matter which of the three guys that were in there. And I know this is the macro version of the whole thing, but all three of these guys could come back, and you're loading in some new talent as well. It's like, what? Maybe they can play with two footballs. I don't know.
You want to talk about something that was impressive, Vince? If you look, so Logan Diggs had 114 total yards, 6.7 yards per touch. Audric Estime had 104 total yards, 18 plays, 5.8 yards per touch. Chris Tyree had 52 yards of total offense, 5.8 yards per touch. And it was just like like you said, it didn't matter who it was. Yeah. You put them in there, they're going to make plays some way, somehow. Tyree did it more. He had the inside zone and then some duo runs, but then he also got outside on a couple well-designed perimeter plays. I'm going to say something else. Here is a criticism that I have of the game to a degree, and that is they should have gone back to 21. And moving forward, 21 has to, with Tyree in the game, because here's what was happening. We saw the plays, Vince, where he kind of came out in motion and made plays on the perimeter. But did you notice, especially in the first half and a little bit in the second half, they would motion him and Clemson would move out and they would just hammer Estime right up inside. Estime or Diggs right up inside.
Yep.
You have to utilize that more. And I'm hoping that what we saw Saturday was a taste of that, that they're going to go back to the 21, because that has been their most efficient big play alignment all year, pass and run. When they get Tyree in the game with another back, and then there's a lot more things you can do out of that. I hope that was a building block towards using that more moving forward, because that was a really impressive. I mean, dude, go 22 personnel, because you can put those, put Tyree out in the slot if you with another receiver, and there's things you can do with it. So I liked that. Now, again, it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. The reality is Notre Dame scored 28 offensive points. Excuse me. Notre Dame scored 21 offensive points. And that's it. Right. So again, that was what they needed to win. And you're not going to get as many drives when you have a blocked punt for a touchdown and a defensive touchdown, right? You're not going back on the field in those instances.
Right.
But there were missed opportunities in this game to do more offensively. This is the second game in a row they've blown a team out where their offense failed to get more than, score in the 30s. Now, another one of Notre Dame's touchdown drives was a short field. So Notre Dame obviously had the blocked punt return. Then they went on a nice long drive. Then their third touchdown was only a 14-yard touchdown drive. And, that was one that came off of the Benjamin Morrison interception. So the offense only put two drives together the whole game that were over 14 yards on touchdowns. They had a 75-yard touchdown drive late and a 78-yard touchdown early. So the offense still isn't consistently moving the ball enough. Sure. The big part of it is the pass game's still not there yet. Again, it needs to get better, but there were some missed opportunities. I talked about before. They've got to figure out ways to just tell Tommy or Drew Pine, hey, dude, get to the third step. There's cover 0, cover 1. Get to your third step and just throw it as far as you can outside the device and let him go make the play. Put some touch on it, drop that sucker over there. They're going to have to do that, and he's going to have to hit some of those plays. But there was some other stuff. I actually thought Tommy Reese's design game plan was good. There was comeback routes that were open that Drew was going too late. He was just rushing through his progressions, Vince. He wasn't patient. And this play is a perfect example. I'm gonna draw this. I'm gonna bring this up real quick. Now, this is why this matters. This play, say 1st and 10 play, it was on the drive that Blake Groupie missed the field goal.
Yeah. So
they didn't get points here. Okay, so Notre Dame comes out and they are in 13 personnel. Actually, yes, 13 personnel, because that's Braden Lindsey's right here. So they got Lindsey here, and then you can see they've got a tight end to the top. So there's a tight end up here, and tight end here and a tight end here. Now, I really like this play call, Vince, because it looked to me like they were trying to go to somebody other than Michael Mayer here. So again, what have I been critical of Tom Maurice for? So here's what happened on this particular play, Vince. Okay, so you had Mayer here. Mayer comes across on a crossing route.
Yep. Shallow.
Okay, and he steps on the linebacker's toes. And guess what the linebackers did? They stayed on Mayer. This safety opened his hips and flew that way. And what they did is you had so let me show you. So you've got a backer here and then 4 linemen, backer, and then the safety came down. So the safety came down over top because this is a very run-heavy alignment. Very heavy run tendency here. So again, what have we asked Coach Reese to do? Know your own tendency so you know how teams are going to play you, and then you can attack them. And this is exactly what he did here. Okay, this was a great play design, great play call here, Vince. Okay, so what ends up happening is Mitchell Evans gets a wide release here, gets vertical. This guy opens up with him, and then Mitchell goes to the middle of the field. Braden Lindsey flies off the ball and takes the top off the defense. Mm-hmm. Safety bails, and then Mitchell bends it right behind this guy. Linebacker stayed here, and there's an opening right here. Really nice opening on this play, Vince, where Drew looked at it. If you look at it from the tight, Drew looked at it. He looked right at it, and he just went away from it too soon. He showed no anticipation on the play. If he sticks with that for just a half a second, and as soon as Mitchell Evans breaks inside, just throw that ball out over the middle, and bam, there it is. Mm-hmm. And he catches that. I mean, look where he's at, Vince. He breaks this thing off. He's inside the 10-yard line.
Absolutely. He catches with a chance to score. I mean, your momentum's heading into the end zone.
If he can run over this free safety right here.
Yeah, you got a safety to beat.
And so Mitchell's there. I mean, good, well-designed play. It's there. Drew's just got to hit it. I mean, it's as simple as that. Drew's got to hit that, Vince.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's he saw it. He just lacked the patience and the anticipation to just throw it out there because he's not confident yet. Now, I'm hoping that some of the throws he did hit later in the game mean next week when that play gets called, because this was called early. Later in the game, he hit Mayer on the wide fade. He hit Jaden Thomas on the comeback. He hit a couple plays later. You hope that this is something they go back to and he comes back to it, because that's the difference between in a game like, you know, let's say Clemson did play its game and played better. You know, if you play Clemson 10 times, I don't think you blow them out like this 10 times. I just don't think that's how it goes. That's not how football works. You know what I mean? It's like we talked about last year. Georgia, Alabama play one time. Bama blows Georgia out. They play the next time. Things don't go that way. 2017, Auburn beats the mess out of Georgia, and then they play later in the year in the SEC title, and Georgia beats the mess out of Auburn, right? It's just how football works. On Saturday, Notre Dame was clearly the better team. Do I think Notre Dame would probably beat Clemson more than Clemson beat Notre Dame this year? I do think so. And that's why I said all week I thought that Notre Dame was going to win this game. But it's a thing where you look at it and you say, if you're going to beat these teams when they're playing better, these are the kind of plays you have to make, because you went from missed field goal by a guy who hasn't been super accurate this year to potentially first and goal inside the 10. And those are just the plays you have to make. People say, oh, your expectations are high, whatever the case may be. Those are simple throws that I know Drew Pine can make. We have seen him make them. That's literally almost the same exact type of ball we saw him hit against North Carolina, and the same kind of ball we saw him hit against BYU. And this isn't a lack of a talent thing. This is he's just not confident right now.
Throwing the seam,
that's what it is.
It's not a difficult throw.
No. Vince, we saw him hit the seam for a touchdown to Lorenzo Styles against North Carolina. We saw him throw 3 gorgeous seams against BYU, against much tighter coverage than was right there.
Right.
It's not a talent thing. It's in his head. And my hope is that later in the game, Drew hit a couple really nice throws, and he was doing the Conor McGregor swagger. I'm hoping that stuff kind of is the swing to say, hey, you can do this, dude. You can do this. Right. And that's the thing that allows him to say, hey, I'm going to start playing with more confidence.
That throw he made to Jaden Thomas was as good as it gets, to be honest with you, because he could have taken the check down to, I believe it was Michael Mayer was on the shorter route, but he got his body flipped. He threw that ball to Jaden Thomas, and it was right on the money, right exactly where it needed to be. So if there's anybody that's thinking he doesn't have the physical talent to do something, that should erase that from your minds, because that was the best throw I've seen him make, to be honest with you. It was on the run. It was the wrong side. He had to turn his shoulders. I mean, that was a fantastic throw put right where it needed to be. And it was a gutsy throw because he could have thrown it underneath and he decided to go deep with it. That was great, man. That actually really impressed me, that throw. And that one was fun to watch.
Something you brought up, Vince, too, that we didn't talk about earlier. The last thing that we liked, for the second week in a row, we're seeing a lot more of Tobias and Dion playing together. Tobias Merriweather and Dion playing together.
Personnel.
Yeah.
I mean, the guys who are deserving to play are playing. And for whatever reason, you can take that definition for whatever you want for deserving, but the personnel packages that I saw on Saturday night were the guys who should be on the field, right? Tobias Merriweather had a ton of snaps. Deion Colsey had a ton of snaps. They deserve to be in there. They're blocking their butts off. They're catching the ball when it comes near them. They're doing what they're supposed to do. Jaden Thomas had a ton of snaps. He deserves to be out there. He's doing what he's been asked to do, right? Lorenzo Styles did not have a ton of snaps. What'd you say? He had 11 snaps all game? Yeah.
He didn't play a whole lot after that drop.
No. And guess what? That's
he's fighting
accountability.
The ball.
And that's fine.
Fighting the ball. He's fighting the ball.
He'd be the first one to tell you he probably doesn't deserve to play.
I would hope so.
I mean,
I would hope so.
I'm very happy that they're not just running guys out there to run them out there
anymore.
Anymore.
And even before Lorenzo dropped that ball, they were putting Dion and Tobias out there. That if you're going to be a power running team, you need to get your big receivers on the field more and give them more chances to get the ball. That's what these next 2 weeks need to be about.
Yep.
Yes, you could run for 400 yards against Navy, but does that make you better and get you ready to go beat USC and then maybe get into a bowl game and win that bowl game? I don't think it does. Especially if a team gets a month to prepare for you when you're just running the football.
Right.
And we get people say this, and I'm just going to have to disagree with this. Cooper Bowen says Pine can only be coached up so much until there's nothing more he can do. And as much as I hate to say it, it is what we are seeing. Again, what I'm asking him to do, I pulled that throw up specifically because we have seen him hit that throw at least 3 times this season, right? Not in high school, not last year. This season, we've seen him hit those throws. It's in his head. And they're just and this is up to Drew at this point in time. I mean, Coach Reese has got to keep coaching him up and find ways to get him comfortable with this. But he's got to just say, man, just trust the system, pull the trigger, get the ball out. He did that better in the second half. He did. I just hope that was the springboard to maybe get him more confident to where the next game he's willing to take that throw.
Right.
Because if he can start just hitting a couple of those are simple throws that Division III quarterbacks that I've coached can make. Okay, I'm sorry, it's not that hard of a throw. And if you think it's because Drew doesn't have the talent to make it, you're missing the boat here. I'm sorry, you just are.
Right.
It's in his head. It's in his head. So I just wanted to point that out. We're not doing we'll answer super chats later, but just want to kind of get to that. So if they can start hitting some of that stuff, Vince, offensively, this is going to be good.
Absolutely. And again, Drew can hit those. He can. Right. He just
physically he can, mentally he can't right now. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Vince, let's talk about the Notre Dame defense.
Yeah.
When I broke down the defense, Vince, and I know you and I talked about this before the show, I thought the linebackers played well live. I thought Benjamin Morrison played well live. They both graded out even higher on the film.
Yes.
J.D. Bertrand and Maris Luafau on Saturday against the best team they've played since the season opener were the guys we thought they were going to be coming this season. And it's now the second game in a row that they've been that. And they were good against UNLV. They just had a couple miscues that resulted in big plays, but that UNLV started it. They were great last week, and they were great. I mean, I'm not talking about they were good. They were great last night. Marist was man, Vince, I'll let you get into it, man. But we talked about JD last night, instinctive, flying around, making plays. Like the tackle for loss he was run stunting into the A-gap. And then they saw the jet sweep, and he just quickly veers out and makes the play behind the line. You saw last night what we were saying all year. It's not about athleticism. They're not slow. They're playing slow. You remember when I explained that, Vince? There's a difference between being slow and playing slow.
Absolutely.
The last 2 weeks, you're seeing that. They were never slow. They were playing slow. You saw JD's ability to run last night, and
right.
But the one I want to focus on is we saw last night what Maris Luafau can be when he is. This is what I'm doing.
Yes,
I know what I'm doing.
Singularly motivated is the best way to put it.
Singularly focused.
Singularly
focused.
Yes,
that's a better way of saying it.
And I give a lot of credit to Al Golden in Week 9 for knowing his personnel and knowing how they are going to be effective in his defense. Okay.
I'm also going to give a little assist to Marcus Freeman because it just so happened that the light went on the week after Stanford. Marcus Freeman had that talk with his coordinators and say, we got to scale back a little bit.
All right,
and kudos to Al Golden for listening.
Yeah.
Kudos to Al Golden for listening.
The first half against Syracuse, the entire game against Clemson, it was a very well-called game where he was bringing guys from all over the place. They knew their job and what they had to do, and they were able to execute that job at a high level. I'm telling you, this defense can be absolutely dynamic when it is called properly, right? This is not a read and react, and I'm talking about the linebackers at the moment. This is not a read and react style of defense. That they're not going to flourish in that defense. They need to be coming downhill right now. Whatever their assignment is, A gap, B gap, outside, whatever it is, and then they can adjust on the fly. Yeah, that's what you saw yesterday. And Clemson didn't know what to do with these guys. The offensive line they were just seeing blue blurs come by, or they were actually getting stood up and chucked off to the side with the momentum that these linebackers. I mean, the other thing that the linebackers weren't doing is they weren't directly taking on blocks like they've done so many times in the past. They were using their momentum to their advantage. They weren't squaring guys up and allowing themselves to be blocked. They were going off, however you want to say it, they were going off half of the block and they were getting through and they were going across face. And they were doing all the things that you don't want to do as an offensive lineman, allowing these guys to cross their face and all these different things. That's what Notre Dame was doing to Clemson. They weren't allowing Clemson to do anything to them, right? And it was so much fun. I mean, they were absolutely flying to the football. And speaking of that, as a team, the swarming defense was so much better last night than it's been all season. You had guys stepping up and holding guys up, and then all of a sudden there was 5 blue shirts, cleaning it up. We haven't seen it to this degree all year. And that was just beautiful. I mean, it was team defense. And we talk about how the offense feeds off each other when it comes to blocking. When you're swarming to the football, those guys feed off that too. Again, football is the ultimate team sport. And when everybody's flying around and everybody's flying to the football and everybody's swarming, it pays off and it rubs off. And it is so much fun to watch, man. If you go back and you watch this game, there are multiple guys on almost every tackle. And once the guy goes down, there's still guys coming to the tackle. We haven't seen that, man. We haven't seen that to this degree this year. And that was great. I mean, that was just so great.
I think another thing too, Vince, is I really felt like this was one of the best games that I saw from this defensive staff as far as just being inside the head of the opposition.
Yeah. They knew what Clemson wanted to do offensively. Yeah. And they're like, go ahead, but we're going to make you do what we want you to do within what you want to do, if that makes sense. And we can explain that too. But
I thought there was a lot of things that they did yesterday where they were basically baiting Clemson into doing certain things, baiting him into pulling it out, throwing it outside. Bubbles. Right. And
Notre Dame forced them to do that.
Yes, exactly. And I just felt like it was one of those games where they wanted to make this a perimeter game because they felt their athletes were better. And I think this is one of the things I said last night. What is missing when I said earlier that if they played 10 times, we wouldn't get the same result. That's just not how football works.
Right.
But I think the more repeatable, I think the thing that would be tougher to repeat is the performance of the run game. I don't know if you can repeat 263 every single time you play.
Sure.
Right. Because it was so well designed and so well executed. And there were such little holes. It just takes one little thing by the defense to improve and it gets better. what we saw from the Notre Dame defense against the Clemson offense was far more repeatable.
Mm-hmm.
I think Notre Dame had better players. And whereas the offense-defense matchup in the box is a lot tighter. Now, I will say this. If you play on a dry field or in a non-windy day, then maybe Notre Dame could have maybe even been more successful with some different things. Anyway, that's a different conversation for a different day because we don't know if that would have been the case because it didn't rain. I mean, it was windy. But I feel like what we saw last night was more repeatable. I thought Clemson's line actually played well. I thought they blocked hard. They were assignment sound. When Notre Dame made plays up front, they just beat them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just Jason Adamiola is just better than any of the guards of the center for Clemson. I mean, those guys just going to block them. I mean, they were doing what they're supposed to do. They were just going to block them. I thought their tackles had a good game, but the Notre Dame players play with great angles on the edge, Vince. They set the edge effectively. They wanted to spill everything back inside. This is what the game plan was, Vince. Run game wise, they wanted to funnel everything back inside. Pass game wise, they wanted to funnel everything outside to the perimeter, and they pulled it off beautifully well.
Yep.
And it required the ends to be great setting the edge every single time, and they were. Because the reason that's important, Vince, is you'd see Will Shipley kind of getting through the first level, and you think, uh-oh, and then somebody was just right there because they had condensed the box by how hard they were setting the edge. What Clemson wants to do is get a little bit more of a stretch to when he does make that vertical.
He's got a hole,
that vertical cut. Well, not only the hole, but now that backside linebacker is about 2 more feet further away.
Right.
And now he's bam, because Will Shipley is explosive.
Yes.
But it was also tight. Yes. It was so tight that they weren't able to get through there. And then, of course, this game plan, here's the thing too, Vince. Linebackers played great.
Mm-hmm.
They were great. But a big key to this game too was the play of the Notre Dame corners.
Bingo. And that is
I'm talking
so
about
important.
We'll get to the downfield coverage in a second. But they whipped the receivers from Clemson all game long. Like, I mean, Cam Hart, he got beat a couple times in the pass game. And and Benjamin gave up a couple comebacks. Jaden Mickey gave up a couple comebacks, against off coverage. But they ate up the perimeter stuff. I mean, and the only time Clemson had positive gains on the perimeter stuff is they had to hold. They were blatant holds. I mean, Cam was beating them so bad inside up the field that they just yanked them back. It was just, you could not call that. I thought Benjamin Morrison and Cam Hart's ability to come up and be physical on the edge was a huge part of last night's game.
Well, and we've had issues all season with open field tackling by the secondary, with safeties, corners, the whole deal, right? That was not the case last night. If they didn't flat out make the tackle themselves, they held it up or made the ball carrier hesitate long enough for that swarm to come over.
Like what did Jesse say last night, right? Just hang on to their legs until somebody comes over, and that's what you do.
And that's what they did, and they weren't whiffing in space. And look, if I'm Clemson and I'm putting together a game plan against Notre Dame, I want my guys with the ball in space because I think I can make Notre Dame miss, right? Notre Dame didn't miss last night. And, sometimes the game plan doesn't work. And they kept going outside, hoping to find somebody that was going to miss a tackle. And that didn't happen. I mean, there was one where Benjamin Morrison got run over, but he held on.
Yep.
And it was long enough for 2 other guys to come and finish off the play because it was a big tight end.
It was JD, right? Wasn't JD one? He drilled him right in the back.
Drilled him in the back. It was 84. It was Allen. It was the big tight end, right? And it was a bubble screen. And Morrison beat his guy, got run over. I mean, he got hit hard, but he held on long enough. JD came over and cleaned it up, and boom, there you go. It was like a 5-yard game.
It was definitely a weight room day for Benjamin Morrison. It's going to be one of those things where, like, dude, you're great. You're a great talent, but here's why you got hit the weight room.
Absolutely.
Right? The other thing about the corner play, especially with Benjamin Morrison, he was so good on vertical coverage because what we said this during the week, Vince, and I'm not sure if you guys talked about this in your shows, but so look, Clemson likes to throw the ball down the field.
Absolutely.
They're going to attack you down the field. And you got a big armed quarterback. And we were talking about this in the pregame, Vince, when we were at the tailgate. And I said, one of the advantages Clemson has, they have a big armed quarterback who can make some of those throws into the wind.
Mm-hmm.
And they try to take shots, and there just was nowhere to go. You had to throw the perfect ball to get there. And that's just not who he is. That's not who DJ is. He's not that throw the perfect ball guy. Drake May could maybe drop one or two of them in there last night. DJ's not. And the impressive thing is, and I went back and watched the All-22, and you'd see it, Vince, Benjamin Morrison was just toying with them on the outside. I mean, he was hip to hip. He was right in front of them because, again, they wanted to force the back shoulder this week because DJ doesn't throw that ball real well. They wanted to not let him throw it downfield.
Hence the 96
and he did a great job of that. Exactly. Yeah. And he stayed with them. And the only thing that helped, there was a lot of pass interference penalties. I thought all but one of them were bad calls. I would not tell my kids to do anything different. Mm-hmm. And like the one on DJ Brown, who I thought you thought played a solid game last night. The one on him, that he's got a right to that football. That should not have been pass interference.
All he did was step in front of the receiver.
He didn't knock the receiver created the contact to me. Yeah, coming back to DJ.
Right.
I thought the corners were excellent last night, Vince. Like this is what we thought the cornerback position could be eventually, because you knew Cam Hart has not been who we thought he was going to be. He hasn't even been as good as he was last year, in my opinion. But he's starting to look more and more like it. And, he got beat late for a play. But I think other than that, he's been getting better. I thought he played good. I thought he played pretty well last night. And coverage-wise, he was great against the run and the perimeter screen. So I'm talking about downfield coverage-wise. But Benjamin Morrison is the kid I thought he would be, but a year ahead of schedule.
Yeah.
Like, I thought he would need a year. He was kind of raw in high school. He's just a really athletic kid and really long kid. Mike Mickett's done a great job getting that kid ready to play. And he wasn't an early enrollee either. Right. His technique, because what would happen to Ben during the year, Vince, is he would have great cover play, bad footwork, beat on a slant. Great cover play, wrong drop pedal steps, and you get beat inside on an in cut. Right? Last night, what we saw him do was technique, play after play after play after play was good technique. Mm-hmm. And man, you liked what you saw from that man. He was good. Now he's going to have a game in 2 weeks, maybe, where he doesn't make. I mean, a week ago against Syracuse, he does the wrong drop in the end zone, gets beat for a touchdown. Right? But you love to see him bounce back from that, and he bounced back in a big way. I mean, he bounced back in that game, Vince, and he finished that game really strong. He got beat a couple times early and finished really strong. In this game, he just came out against big receivers too, and just was dominant. So I was very pleased with the performance there, Vince. I didn't think the defensive line they weren't super productive. And I thought part of that was I thought Clemson's line played well. They made plays when they needed to. They did a great job setting the edge. But the dude that I thought all night long was just
Justin. Say it.
Jason.
Oh, okay. I thought Justin.
Yeah, Justin did. He had some really good flashy plays.
Yeah.
But the inside, Jason was just unblockable.
Yeah. Right.
He was unblockable. Justin had some big plays. We saw Isaiah Foskey running with Will Shipley on a wheel route. I'll say it again. When your fast running back is getting ran stride for stride with a 6'5", 260-pound defensive end, you just don't have a lot you can do, Vince. Yeah. I thought too, and you know what? I meant to find this play, and I'm so mad at myself, Vince, that I didn't get it. But I'm going to try and find it now. One of my favorite calls of the night was the corner fire by Tariq Bracy.
Oh, the sack?
That was yes.
Yeah.
That was a brilliant call. I'm going to see if I can find it.
I might be
here, but man, it was a beautiful play. Absolutely beautiful play. It was a drive-killing play. I'm trying to find it here on my play sheet. Do you remember which it was? I thought it was first quarter,
so
right?
Well, he got the sack. It was 28-7, and it was
third so it was the
8.
Second.
Or, it was 2nd and 2. He sacks him to go to 3rd and 8, and that's when Uiagalelei scrambled 20 yards to the 1-yard line.
That's not the play I'm talking about. I'm talking about the corner the nickel, the edge fire with Tariq Bracy, which I thought was in the first half, is the play I was referring to. So I can't find it. Unfortunately, I forgot to mark that play down. But anyway, I thought that we saw. So Al Golden, I thought what I was told during the week was that they were going to have a lot of they were going to have a lot of they're going to bring a lot of pressures in this game,
and they did,
which I was a little nervous about. It was the first play of the second half, so that's where it was. So I'm gonna be able to find this here real quick, so that'll be good. So I'll be able to bring it up because I want to. It was the first drive of the second half, is what I meant to say. So I thought this was a great play, Vince. I thought, man, this is a great play call.
I see it was 3rd and 5.
Yep.
It was 3rd and 5.
So
I had Bertrand. I said pressure from the outside, Bertrand. That's what I wrote down. So,
yep. So I'm gonna pull this up here, and I'm gonna draw it up and put it on the thing because I thought this was a great play call. So just give me a second. I gotta connect the laptop or the computer back to our screen. Give me a second because I wanted to draw up this play, and because again, it wasn't like super complicated, Vince. But it was just one of those things where you're like, man, that's just a great call, a great schematic call. You knew what they're trying to do, and you went against it. And it was an example of just I felt like so what I was saying was I was told they were going to blitz a lot this week, and that they had worked a lot on pressures, and I was a little nervous about that because this isn't a team I want to blitz a lot on first and second down. But if you go back and watch the game, they actually weren't blitzing a lot on first and second down. When they were blitzing, it was on 3rd down, and they had him in so many 3rd and long situations last night that it's just kind of like there was nothing that they could really do. I mean, there was really nothing that this is not pulling up for me right this second. It's being a little bit tricky with me here, Vince. The whiteboard doesn't want to work for some reason, but their 3rd down pressures I thought were really sound. I thought they were really smart. They didn't bring overloads in regard to like bringing 6 guys. What they were smart is they would bring overloads from sides. And I thought they did a really good job of using Isaiah Foskey again as sort of we know that they're going to be really worried about Isaiah Foskey on 3rd down. We know that. And so what we're going to do is we're going to try to do things to complement that. And I thought they did a great job of that last night, Vince. And try to get the whiteboard going here because it looks like it is frozen. So just give me a second.
I love
here
when
to get this going. I know, right? When technology sucks,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, it drives me nuts.
Life is good there.
But this play was an example, Vince. And again, it was a big series because here's the deal: it's 14-0. The game is still in doubt, right? This isn't a game that's like, Notre Dame was up 28-0 at halftime. 14-0. Clemson starts with the ball. This game is absolutely still in doubt. This is still a game that Notre Dame absolutely could, if they don't come out and execute and play well. And what's been one of the big issues that Notre Dame has had this year, Vince? 3rd quarter, right? 3rd quarter, teams come out of the half and they go right at Notre Dame. And so you come out of the break and you're like, okay, let's see what they do. Let's see how this goes. And so what you have here is this is the play that we're talking about. So it's 3rd down and 5. So what Notre Dame does is you see this is Tariq Bracy here. Now, what I believe that this was a check. This was a blitz that was a check based on the Clemson formation. And here's what I mean by that. If the bunch is out here, you can't bring that fire because if you bring that fire, you have to move somebody else out here or, you've got 1, 2, then who's your 3?
Right.
You have to have Tariq come out. So what would have happened is Tariq would have been out here, and then you'd have had JD coming off of the edge.
Yeah, right.
Right? Well, that leaves you a little bit vulnerable to the inside slants and different things that have been hurting you. Yep. So what they did was, because Clemson went bunch, you saw Notre Dame adjust because JD started here. This is where JD was. They made this check. They brought them both off the edge. So you can see here JD and Tariq are both coming off the edge. Yep. Now, Tariq is able to kind of play this game where he's like showing and then he's dropping, he's showing, he's dropping. He's playing that game because of how tight the bunch is. And then at the snap, JD actually crosses the face of the offensive tackle. And Tariq comes off the edge. Now, Clemson saw that Notre Dame was going to bring they know that Notre Dame is a pressure team on 3rd down. So what Clemson did was they went trips away. And because I'm not done with what I thought was great about the call, they went trips away and they went here with Will Shipley. which they love throwing him that wheel route out of the backfield. So Notre Dame brings this overload pressure here, meaning overload from a side, but they weren't overload from numbers. Only brought 5 because they had Isaiah Foskey open up and run on a wheel route with Will Shipley. And so they got him here. There's no back. You've got a double-edged pressure. The back is away from the blitz. That's the other thing. The back is over here. So they overload this side. The tackle now has to pick his poison. Tariq comes off the edge, forces DJ to scramble to move to his right, and he gets sacked by, I think it was like Justin Adamiola or
JD.
JD and Jason Adamiola were the two ones that converged on the quarterback. And it was just one of those plays where Vince, it was executed well, but this is great play design because you have answers out here, right? And you've got the answer here, and I mean,
and you're forcing
it was just beautiful.
And the other thing is you're forcing DJ to make a decision quickly. And that's what you want to do. That's not what
he does.
Because that's not what he's good at. He's just not a natural quarterback from a thinking standpoint. He's a
release
specimen.
Standpoint.
Right.
We talked about this during the week, Vince, and you and I talked about it last night. He's got a very long throwing motion. Right. And he's not a natural thrower, as you said, which means it's a lot harder for him to speed his delivery up and speed the ball up and still be accurate.
Right.
I want to wrap up with this, Vince. Yeah. Go ahead.
Love it.
Go ahead, Vince.
No, I was just going to say, you have to get him off platform. You got to make him. Yeah. You've got, and there was a play early on in the game, and we talked about this in the post game, right? Where they didn't even get to him, but they showed that they were going to blitz. They brought it. It was picked up, and he still threw it off of his back foot,
right?
Because he was thinking about it being in his face.
Because he's not a natural quarterback.
That's what they needed to do, and they did it, and they were in his head all night long. He wasn't able to sit back there and throw for 400 yards like he did against Notre Dame 2 years ago.
He was shook by the film he saw from last week, I think.
Yeah, I think so too.
I do.
Yeah,
I do.
Because he saw the first half film of them bringing pressure from all different angles and getting home and doing all these different things. And they saw a quarterback with very similar traits to what DJ Uiagalelei has in the quarterback from Syracuse, and he had 35 yards in the first half. And you can say he was injured. You can say whatever you want, but Notre Dame was in his head too. And they got into DJ's head. And it was game over. I mean, he couldn't do anything.
Vince, that's also, we talked about too, where the defensive line didn't necessarily have a lot of pressure, but just like the BYU game, it's not just what he saw Syracuse from a blitzing standpoint. That's part of it.
Right.
But it's also because he saw Isaiah Foskey the last few games just crushing people.
Right.
He saw Jason Adamiola unblockable. He saw Justin Adamiola going off. He's seen Riley Mills, and it was in his head. That's what happened to Jaron Hall. He saw the film. He saw how, this defensive line is really good, and it got in his head. Mm-hmm. I gotta commend the Notre Dame defensive staff as well. I thought this was one of the best coaching performances of a Notre Dame staff I've seen in a long time, just across the board, Vince. I thought the ability to outcoach, I didn't think they outcoached Syracuse on offense. I thought they just were better than Syracuse.
Sure.
It was an okay game plan. I thought the defensive game plan was great until they decided to go away from it against Syracuse.
Right, exactly. Yes,
this was a thorough 60-minute whooping and a great game plan. We saw from Coach Reese, but, we did a keys to victory. And here are my 4 keys to victory against Syracuse for the Notre Dame defense. Number 1, tackle, tackle, tackle. They had these kids ready to play and ready to tackle at high level, Vince, on all 3 levels. Number 2, shut down the run game. I'd say mission accomplished on that, wouldn't you, Vince? I mean, the run game numbers for Clemson were not – yeah. I mean, they came to the game. They were over 180 yards on the game, Vince, and they rushed for 90 and 3. And again, okay, they threw a lot, sure. 25 carries, 3.6 yards per carry. Shut down the run game. You made them one-dimensional.
But they had 191 yards passing, which
right, on a bunch of attempts. Yeah. Number 3, I didn't say hit the quarterback. I didn't say sack the quarterback. I didn't say pressure the quarterback. I said get in the quarterback's head. Not just with hits and pressures, but get him thinking this is what you're going to do, but you're not. You're doing something else. They got in his head. I mean, 3 for 3. And then the 4th one was protect the seams, because one thing that we did not see on Saturday was Clemson hit the seam throws. Do you know why? Because Notre Dame played it really well.
They had one throw to the seam, and that was late. That was late in the game.
It was late in the game. And that was an area that Clemson really likes to go after.
Yeah.
And Notre Dame shut it down.
And just to go back to our earlier conversation about Drew Pine and hitting the seams, right? Why does Clemson like to hit the seams? Because DJ can hit that throw with consistency.
It's an easier throw.
Because it's an easier throw. I just wanted to make that point.
Yeah.
There you go.
So, I mean, Vince, you're talking about you nailed all 4 keys. They nailed all 4 keys to beat Clemson, and they dominated Clemson. I mean, if it's not for officiating, that's a 35-7 ball game.
Absolutely.
I mean, so huge kudos to the Notre Dame coaching staff.
Yes.
On that. It was just a tremendous offensively.
Yeah.
Tommy Reese and his staff did a great job. Defensively, Al Golden and his staff did a great job. Front to back, all levels. Receiver, Chancey Stuckey getting the receivers to play at a high level, knowing they weren't going to get the ball a ton. Dylan McCullough, we were talking a lot about Harry and a lot about Coach Mickens and a lot about Brian Mason, rightfully so. But Dylan McCullough has this running back group playing at an incredibly high level, week after week after week. And really, it was that unit that sparked this football team. It was that unit against Cal in the second quarter and second half that got this offense going. It was the running backs that sparked the big performance against North Carolina. And then, of course, once they started running the ball against BYU, it's the backs that have been really fueling this offense. Doing a great job there. He's not getting enough recognition for the job he's done. And, of course, Brian Mason is just doing a tremendous job. Just an absolutely tremendous job. And the other thing, too, is he doesn't coach special teams by himself. Other assistants will help out with different aspects of special teams.
Absolutely.
And he
does a great job of figuring out the weaknesses of the opposition and going for it.
Did you see the tweet that Notre Dame put out tonight?
It was texted to me during this show, so I haven't had a chance to. I know what
it's before
content.
The game.
Yeah.
He's saying when they're backed up, they will do this. And when they do this, we're going to go get it. And that's exactly what happened.
It's unbelievable.
I mean, that's just great preparation and knowing your opponent. Love what he's done. He's done a great job. Mm-hmm. Vince, we're going to get to some super chats here and some questions here a little bit. But before we do, I do want to ask people, do us a favor, hit that like button, everybody. Great crowd tonight. Huge audience tonight.
Yeah,
hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, sign up for the message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. And if you're listening via podcast platform, we would greatly appreciate a 5-star review.
By the way,
so Vince,
don't forget the merch store because there's some really good stuff.
Some really good stuff.
My favorite hat is the one you're wearing right now, and it's actually right here. It's my favorite hat.
Great hat.
You guys got to get one of these.
It's a very good hat. It's a fitted hat too.
I know. So, that's what I like. Yes. I like the stretch fitted hats. Big fan.
Let's answer some of these super chats, Vince. We did have a good number tonight and some comments and questions. Yeah. Sean Stewart with a super chat. We got an ass kicking tonight and deserved it. That was a direct quote from Dabo Sweeney.
I watched his post-game press conference earlier this morning, and dude, he didn't know what it looked like. He just got hit with a Mack truck, and then they ran it back over, and then ran him over again. He was. Yeah. He took full responsibility, and somebody asked him, "Did you see this coming?" He's like, "Not in a million years."
Right. And he said, "We had a great week of practice."
Yeah.
The thing is, he admitted his team didn't play well, and they didn't coach well, but he also was like, because of Notre Dame.
Right.
And I thought I liked how he did that. It was like, look, they kicked our butts. They outcoached us. It wasn't like, remember when Notre Dame beat Stanford last year 45-14, and David Shaw was like, it was actually a lot closer and all that kind of stuff. And it's just like,
just making excuses. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I thought I know some people don't like Dabo. I don't quite get it, but hey, it is what it is.
I like him. I do.
Dolly Madison with a super chat. Thank you. I actually knew a girl in college named Dolly Madison.
Really?
I did. No, I did. Yeah.
Say from the grave, we're getting some money.
Yeah. Yeah. But Dolly Madison with a super chat. Big super chat. Thank you, Dolly, very, very much. Great win.
That's
Go
awesome.
Irish. Appreciate that very, very, very much. Tyler Evans with a super chat. Thank you for that, Tyler. I'm still jumping for joy over this win. And this was the best weekend in recent memory of college football. It feels like 2 dynasties ended. Notre Dame, is beginning their dynasty. It is kind of interesting. I've had a lot of people say this about Bama's dynasty being ended. So I got some things wrong this year. I thought the loser of the Notre Dame-Ohio State game was going to go on a run and go to the college football playoff. I got that wrong. Notre Dame wasn't ready for that yet.
Right.
I was wrong on that. But I think I got some things right. I called Tennessee being a sleeper team to watch out for. But what did I say before the season, Vince? You remember we did our college football? I said Bama's going to lose twice in the regular season this year. I called that because you could see it slowly happening. And it's just like what happened with Clemson when some of their dudes left. They weren't refilling their lineups with the same kind of dudes.
Right.
More importantly, when the coaches that were stars left, they weren't replacing with the same kind of coaches. That's what ultimately did Lou Holtz in.
That's where it is for me.
Lou Holtz was not replacing his assistants with same caliber assistant coaches in his tenure. And that's what's happening with – I've been saying for years, Pete Golding is not that guy. And I've been saying that Bill O'Brien is not that guy.
They replaced Steve Sarkisian with Bill O'Brien.
They got out coached by LSU last night.
Which is
flat out.
Yeah.
Flat out. They got out. Mike Denbrock was coaching circles around Pete Golding last night. LSU doesn't have better players in Alabama. They got out coached last night. And huge problem. I mean, look, I'll give Brian Kelly and his staff credit. Those kids were ready to play last night, and they outplayed Alabama. It's simple as that. But this is an Alabama team that, Vince, you could see it coming, and you knew it was going to happen at some point in time. And this is the year. And I don't think it's a given that they're going to run the table. I mean, I don't. I mean, they still have to play at Ole Miss.
Right. That's very much a toss-up game. Yeah.
So it's going to get interesting, Vince. It's going to get very, very interesting. And then the Clemson one, too, you and I have been saying for 2 years that Clemson's on a descent.
Yeah.
Now, they're both going to be slow descents. This is still a really good football team.
And Clemson plays in the ACC, so they're going to have an opportunity to still be successful.
Right. I will say there's some people saying the ACC is bad this year. Strongly disagree. You go look at what the ACC has done out of conference against everyone not named Notre Dame, and the ACC has been pretty good this year out of conference. But you look at it, Vince, and it's kind of interesting that they both kind of had the dynasty's over moment the same night. Brian Kelly on one side and Notre Dame on the other side. I thought that was very fascinating. Very, very fascinating. Dan Muller with a super chat. He says, what was most impressive to me was the energy and intensity we had for big game. We jumped all over Clemson. Usually it's the opposite with Brian Kelly being flat. At Notre Dame, that was absolutely true.
Yeah.
Absolutely true. And against Tennessee, that was absolutely true. Last night, they were ready to play, though.
Right.
So I'll give it to them on that. But at Notre Dame, that was always a problem, Vince. They would come out and they would treat these games like they treated the not big games. And that's why Notre Dame never lost to bad teams. It's also why they hardly ever beat good teams under Brian Kelly. Marcus Freeman and his staff did what you and I, Vince, have been begging for years. It's okay to treat it like a big moment that it is.
Exactly.
Right? Like if you spend all this time trying to tamp down the moment, then you're neutering your players to a degree.
Right. And Marcus Freeman embraced
on Monday. He embraced it, Vince, on Monday.
He's like, we're not an underdog. It's two blue blood programs going up against each other, two titans of the blah, blah, blah.
We're ready.
Yeah. Like that was refreshing.
Yes.
I can't think of a better word. It was refreshing.
Yes, it was.
It's okay to call a spade a spade. Okay. It was a big game.
Yeah.
I'm
curious to see how he's going to end the season and how this team's going to end the season because the growth in him as a head coach that we're seeing before our eyes in a short period of time has been really fun to watch. Tom Frawley asks with a super chat, says, Brian, seems like Marcus Freeman's chat with Jim Tressel paid off. I think so, because you know what I think ultimately came down to is Coach Tressel just reminded Coach Freeman to, dude, be yourself. Like, get back to being what you believe in college football, what you believe it takes to be successful. Don't go away from that. Be who you are. And it's paid off. Patrick Barnes with a super chat. Thank you, Patrick. Offense only scored 3 touchdowns. One of them is a really short field. How concerning is the lack of TDs given all the rush yards? I mean, it's somewhat concerning, but they didn't have a ton of possessions yesterday either, Vince, because of the short field, right? So the defense scored a touchdown, the offense, the special team scored a touchdown, and you had another possession that was only 14 yards. I think there's some missed opportunities that were there, but I'm concerned about it, Patrick, but I'm not super concerned about it because they are playing team football. It's the second week in a row that the defense and the special teams have done those things. So, when you look at the possessions that Notre Dame had when the game was somewhat in doubt, mean, they didn't really have a ton, you know. I mean, you had was it Vince
They had 5 in the
4
first half,
5
and then
possessions.
I counted 4 in the second half, but I stopped keeping track after they scored the
Right.
final touchdown.
Right.
So I
think they had one more after that.
Yeah, and they had the kneel down, you know. So
Right.
10 maybe.
Right. And then you look at Notre Dame on offense. I mean, they move the ball okay, and then you just have missed opportunities, right? You have the sack on the first drive when you had guys open. You get the second offensive drive, and again, you're missing guys that are open. That was the play where he just locked in on the angle route. I believe that's the play where he had Tobias one-on-one up top. Third possession, they missed a field goal. That's the thing I'm most concerned about, is that right there, is the missed field goals. The second game in a row you've done that, where you've gotten in field goal. I mean, look, the offense isn't going to score touchdowns every time they get the ball. I don't care how good they are. You get in there, you make some plays to get in field goal range. You know, you have a 9-yard run, a 4-yard run. You have the 14-yard completion to Chris Tyree. You know, you get into 2nd and 12. You get a chance getting 3rd and 6. You miss it, and you're in great possession. You're a great situation to get a field goal, and you miss it. You know, and they got to start making those, right? But yeah, the offense has got to clean some stuff up. Am I concerned about it? Sure. It becomes a problem, Vince, when the defense and special teams stops playing this way. And this is why we can't just dismiss the lack of pass game.
Right.
Again, it didn't hurt him last night, but kind of Patrick's point, what if the defense isn't playing lights out against USC? What if the defense the special teams isn't able to get a score and block a punt and give you the ball at the 2-yard line like they have in the last 2 weeks? Your offense is going to have to start carrying a little bit more of its own weight. And the rush yards are fine, but you can say with all the rush yards, but it's not so much just about rush yards. It's about total yards. And the reality is Notre Dame's total yards were that of a team that's going to score about 24 points. You know, and that's the reality of it. So until the offense starts being a little bit more effective throwing the football, it's going to continue to be a bit of an issue, Vince. I mean, 348 yards of offense last night. That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not going to score a lot of points that way. So, but they're so much closer now, though, Vince.
Absolutely.
You know, and that's the encouraging thing. Truman Theodore Dumel says, "Thank you, Truman. Can Notre Dame play spoiler and maybe have a decent shot at a decent bowl game?" I mean, honestly, right now,
look, I will go on record.
Oh yeah,
and I said this before the Clemson game, right? If they win out, I think they've got an excellent chance at a New Year's Six game, depending on how things shake out around them. They'll have 9 wins. They will have beaten, at the time they played them, they will have beaten 5 ranked teams, 2 of which are in the top 10.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good resume. I realize you had those 2 bad losses, but when it comes to the New Year's Six, it's about matchups and money. It's not about the top 4. I'm not talking about getting in the top 4.
You do have to get high enough in the rankings, and I'm hold on a second. I'm going to agree with you here, so don't get defensive me saying this. They're not going to put the number 23 team in the country in the Sugar Bowl.
Agreed.
Okay. So there does require them to have to climb up the rankings to a certain degree, right? Correct. But here's the point that I'm making. Notre Dame will be in the top 25 this week.
Yes.
And if you look at last week's rankings, you have number 13 now has 3 losses. Number 18 now has 3 losses. Number 20 now has 3 losses. Number 21 now has 3 losses. Number 23 now has 3 losses. Number 24 already had 3 losses. There's going to be a lot of teams that are going to drop games moving forward. Number 6 has 2 losses now. You know, Utah, something's going to have to give with some of these Pac-12 teams, for example. Number 16 now has 2 losses against a pretty weak schedule. So there's a lot of movement to where if Notre Dame wins the next 2 weeks, there's going to continue to be losses like there has every week. There's going to be a lot of 3 loss teams in 10 to 15, 10 to 20.
So when you start comparing resumes,
there you go.
There you go.
So to your point, so now if you're a Notre Dame fan, you want USC to win the next 2 weeks.
Absolutely.
You want Clemson to win the next 3 weeks. You want Syracuse to get back on track and get back in the top 25. You want North Carolina to win out. You want Clemson and Carolina playing in the ACC title.
Absolutely. Because
and then
you basically say you won the conference because you beat both of them.
And you want USC to be 10-1 when you go play. Yes. If your goal is to get in a New Year's Six bowl. Now,
Absolutely.
Here's the counter argument that some will make, and it's a argument that you can't just immediately dismiss, in my opinion. Is it better for Notre Dame to go to the Sugar Bowl and have to play Bama, or let's say go to a bowl, play Michigan or Ohio State or something like that, like a really, really good team? Or is it better to go to the Gator Bowl and play Florida? Or, you know what I mean? Like a team like that. Because getting that win to get to 10 wins, I kind of say, well, it depends on how the team is playing.
Yeah, well.
You know what I mean? Like if they're playing well enough to beat Clemson and USC, then, bring on the non-SEC champ, right? I mean, you know what I mean? Like depending on who it is, but it also would, I don't necessarily want to play Tennessee in a bowl game just because, does Notre Dame have the offense to score 27 on them like Georgia did? I don't have a lot of confidence in that right now, right? So it just depends, but the key is getting that win. But how amazing would it be is if Marcus Freeman can get that top 5 win and then also go out and end the New Year's 6 bowl streak? That would be quite something.
It would. That would take a lot of sour taste out of my mouth from the season.
No doubt.
I'll say that.
No doubt. Hugh Murtha with a super sticker. Thank you, Hugh, very, very much.
There was a question in there from
There
Hugh.
Was? Did you star it?
Yeah, if you scroll down,
okay,
I think he gave another one as well. Okay. I'm not sure, but
he did. He gave another one, and then he asked a question.
Okay.
Let's answer that question. Thank you, Vince, for that very, very much.
Yep.
So Vince says, "What is Notre Dame's strength of schedule rank?" So right now, Hugh, I only have, and I'll see if I can find it real quick. I have last week's, and last week's Notre Dame strength of schedule was 11th.
That's going to go up.
I'm going to see. Yes, I'm going to see. Give me a second to pull this up and see if they've updated those numbers this week. I'm going to just resume here. Let's see if they've updated the strength of schedule. Give me a second here, Hugh. Notre Dame strength of schedule is now 13th. So it has updated and it's gone down for some reason.
That's
here's the thing though. Their game control. Well, that's because they're you had Syracuse lost. They're out of the top 25. Clemson's no longer a top 5 team, right? You had Stanford lost. I mean, you had several teams lose that you've played. BYU did bounce back with a W this week, so that was nice. They're back up to 5-5. So I mean, it's and then somebody else who jumped them, probably played a really good opponent. Sure. But here's the thing: their game control jumped from 22nd to 13th.
Because they were in control of that game from
start to finish. There's no doubt. There is no doubt about that. And then also, this is why they're going to be a top 25 team this year in the college football playoff, and there's no question about it. Their strength of record jumped up from 38th to 23rd. Because that is the thing where it's like, how many teams could have your record with this? And when you play Clemson, they're not going to view a lot of teams as being able to beat Clemson.
Right.
And so that's why. So they were 38th in strength of record, 11th in strength of schedule, and 22nd in game control last week. They were 2-1 against top 25 teams. They will stay 2-1 because you add the Clemson win. Syracuse is probably going to fall out.
Yeah.
And then so now your strength of record is now 23rd. Your strength of schedule is now 13th, and your game control is now 13th. So their resume is clearly that of a top 25 team. And it would not shock me, as Sean Davis said last night, if they, and I think, Vince, you agreed with him, I think, but high teens, it wouldn't shock me if they're in the high teens.
I was expecting
18 to 20.
20 to 22. Yeah. And if it's high teens, and that's even, if you want Notre Dame to go to a New Year's 6 game, then high teens is a fantastic
you want 20 to be the floor if that's the case.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right. Agreed. Because I think if you get in like 13, 14, you got a great shot of getting in. I know people say 12, but there's no level written in stone where Notre Dame needs to get to. But you'd like to be in the top 12 because
you don't want to have that stigma for an entire month of Notre Dame didn't belong there.
Right.
But they'll have plenty of arguments to make. We beat USC, we beat North Carolina, we beat Clemson. Yeah. So, and then you got to hope some of the other teams in your schedule start winning again.
Yeah, no doubt.
So, Hugh, thank you for that very much. I appreciate that. And Vince, thanks for the heads up that Hugh did have a question.
No problem.
Nate Galino with a super chat. Thank you, Nate. Should Marcus shop around for a new OC or roll with Tommy in the coming years? The quarterback play has been less than stellar for a couple of years now, in my opinion. Nate, I'm going to say, I think you've asked this before, and my answer is not going to change. Right now, they're in the middle of the 2022 season. I'm not worried about what they're going to do coaching staff-wise next year. I'm worried about what they're going to do to go beat Navy, and then I'll worry about what they're going to go to do beat Boston College, and then I'm going to worry about what they're going to go do to beat USC. And then if Coach Reese gets a job between then and the bowl game, then we'll talk about it. Otherwise, I'm worried about what they're going to do to go out and beat whoever they play in the bowl game.
And Marcus Freeman isn't shopping for assistant coaches on November 6th.
No. He's worried about Tommy Reese going out and helping them beat Navy.
Right.
So there will be a time and a place to have this conversation, Nate. It's just not right now.
Yep. Well, a lot of shows to fill
appreciate, and I'm not coming at you, Nate. I know it's a topic of conversation, and I have no problem with you all wanting to have that conversation. We're just not going to have it. Number one, I don't call for people to be fired unless you're doing something that's ethical, like ethically wrong, and you've kind of broke that coaching code of you don't do this. Right? If you find out a coach is having an affair with a student, got to go. Mm-hmm. Right? If you found out a guy like put his hands on a player in a threatening manner, right? Like you cross that line.
Right.
If a coach is in the, drinking beers in the locker room or smoking weed in the locker room with players. Okay. Those things I'd call for a guy to get fired for. Tommy Reese isn't doing those things.
No.
Brian Van Gorder didn't do those things. So I don't call for him to be fired. That's just not what I do. That's not what we do here at Irish Breakdown. When that time comes, we'll have that conversation about what should or shouldn't happen. But right now, I want Tommy Reese to go out there and put the best game plan together that he can to go beat Navy. And that's all I care about at this point. There will be a time and a place for that. I hope that by the end of the year, this offense is rolling. And I don't want Tommy to leave. I want him to be here. I like the storyline. I think there's when he's been on, Vince, he does some really good stuff.
This game
it's
plan,
just the up and down of it that drives me freaking nuts.
Yes,
it's like, how can you be that guy and also that guy?
I know, right?
Right. So you hope that the light goes on and he's got the maturity and all that stuff to realize this and make change. I don't know. And if he doesn't, then maybe they will be shopping for a new OC, but I'm just not worried about that right now. Truman Dumel had another super chat. Thank you, Truman. How successful was our recruiting weekend at the Clemson game? Hopefully duper successful. Truman, it was very successful.
Oh, Truman. Yes.
So obviously we're not going to give away the intel we have. There's some intel on the board, but even then there's some things we just can't share. You guys know where I'm going with that. We just don't, that's not our deal. But it went really well. Really, really well. No doubt. Eric Crawford sending in for my 9-year-old son, Evan, who loves you guys. He'll catch tomorrow. Awesome. Thanks, awesome, Evan. Man. Evan Crawford, my guy. Thank you for watching, buddy. I'm saying that for him for tomorrow. He asks, how do you think Drew Pine can improve at quarterback and running the offense? Evan, that's a great question. It really just comes down to what we're asking Drew to do is two things. Number one, do the simple stuff. Mm-hmm. I'm not asking Drew to make the throw he made on Saturday to Jaden Thomas. I'm not asking him to make that throw. If he makes it, great. I'm not asking him to do that. I'm not asking him to make the play that he made against Cal where he's getting swung or BYU gets swung around. He just flicks the ball out to Audric and Audric catches it and goes. I'm not asking him to do that. I'm asking him to make simple plays. Number two, I'm asking him to make throws we've seen him make.
Yep.
I've seen him throw a far outside go route for a touchdown against a college football playoff team. Did against Cincinnati last year. I've seen him precisely go through reads to find that backside receiver coming open for a touchdown. So I'm doing it against Wisconsin. I've seen him hit that throw that I wanted him to hit against Wisconsin. That I wanted him against Clemson. I've seen him do it. I've seen him do it this year multiple times. And they were much harder throws than the one he could have made against Clemson. So I'm not asking him to be something that he hasn't shown already as a college football player that he can be. And that's what I'm asking, Evan, is just do the simple things and just have the confidence in yourself and the system and your teammates to be willing to stick with that read for just a shade longer. show a little bit more anticipation ability. That's what I think, Vince. Do you have anything else that you want to add to that?
No, I think that's fantastic. I think I really appreciate the question too, because I love the fact that Evan is listening to the show, and he would fit right in the middle of all my kids. So that's great, man. I love this age, and I love the inquisitive nature of this age, and I love that he wants to learn how to be a quarterback, or he wants to learn how quarterbacks should go.
Right. And he's not asking, hey, when are they going to bench Drew Pine? He's saying, hey, what can Drew do to get better?
I think
that's
awesome.
what the conversation should be.
Yes. I think that's a great question, Evan. And thanks for listening, man. Really appreciate it.
Milton Fan with a super chat. Thank you very, very much, Milton. 2 questions. 1, how much fun would it be to see Notre Dame O-line versus Georgia D-line? Be one heck of a battle.
I mean, that'd be a heck of a battle.
Last year, I wanted no part of that smoke.
Yeah, oh gosh, last year, that would.
Remember, we were having that conversation about if they made the playoff, the one team we didn't want Notre Dame to face was Georgia.
That would be
because of what that D line would have done to Notre Dame this year.
Yeah, I would love to see it. I really would, because I think Notre Dame rises to the challenge. Yeah, and we
saw it Saturday.
It would just be blow, like back and forth. Here's a blow. There's a blow. Here's a blow. Like, that would be so much fun to watch. If you're just a football junkie and you like watching the trenches, like, that would be an unbelievable matchup to watch. I would enjoy that very, very much. Very much.
Question number 2, how tough is Drew Pine? I don't think that's ever a question for
Drew. He's tough as nails, man.
Physically tough. Physically tough. Now, where Drew's got to get a little bit better is the mental toughness.
Sure.
Because mental toughness isn't always folding or crying or getting happy feet, and where it can also be, I'm not playing well, so I'm rushing through my reads. That's a form of mental toughness that he's got to get better at. I got to stick with this a little bit longer. That's the thing that's even more. That's a thing that can be a little bit more difficult to coach out of a kid, because if a kid's physically tough, he's physically tough. If a kid's not physically tough, there's nothing you're going to do to make him physically tough. Not once you get to college, right? I mean, there's things you can do as a parent that if you got a 5-year-old who's maybe just a little bit, okay, dude, you're crying again. Like, seriously, like, you know what I mean? Like, you're fine. There's things you can do to say, hey, there's a difference between being hurt and, embarrassed, that kind of thing or whatever. But once you get to college, if you're not physically tough, probably not going to get physically tough. But the mental toughness thing is things that you can work on and fix, but it's not easy. At the end of the day, it just comes down to Drew saying, man, I got this. I got this. And hopefully the second half of the Clemson game was the thing that kind of sparks him a little bit. But after, I mean, if you had a question of his physical toughness before Saturday, you shouldn't have. You definitely don't have it now, because that kid took some shots. And he kept fighting.
He did. Yeah. Yep.
We have a super chat from Jim Halloran. Jim, IB, great coverage as always. Was yesterday more about Notre Dame's improvement or Clemson's regression? A little bit of both.
Both. I think there's something to be said for both of those, for sure. Yeah.
Because what have we said, Vince? Closing the gap is twofold. It's one is you going up, but it's also that team coming down a bit.
Right.
And Clemson's not as good as they were. Yeah. And we've talked about this too. Last, was it, I'm trying to think of like, I mean, we've kind of been talking about this for a while, right? When it comes to Clemson, like, yeah, Notre Dame's got to get better, but they're not quite that same team. And we said during the week, this isn't 2018 Clemson. Right. This is like, we're not going to hype Clemson up like, oh, this is just as good as beating 2018 Clemson. No, it's not. This is not that team.
Right.
But this is still a good football team. This is still a team that deserved to be in the top 5. This is still a team that right now, to me, still deserves to be in the top 10. They fell out of the AP and the coaches poll to 12. I don't think they should fall that far. They still have 3 wins over teams that were ranked in the top 25.
They had more than anybody else. They had, I mean, the most anybody else had was 2.
Right.
Last year. We had the show on Tuesday, and we will again. But, so come check it out. But they had 3 wins against top 25 teams. I mean, that doesn't change. They're technically, well, I guess Notre Dame will be up there. As I say, technically, they're still 3-0 against top 25 teams until Tuesday night when Notre Dame jumps in.
Yeah, no doubt. David Hess with a super chat. David, thank you very much. Let's hope the Irish go out with the same energy against Navy and BC. If so, I think we could finish the season 9-3. USC defense is suspect. Great job, IB. Onward, Notre Dame. I'm just going to prepare y'all for something right now. Notre Dame will not have the same energy for Navy and Boston College.
It's not going to happen.
And again, that doesn't mean that they won't have energy, but you can't match that level of intensity every game. You can try.
The crowd won't be the same either.
Well, and the opponent won't be the same.
And the opponent, and there's so many different.
Like, do y'all think that the 88 team was as fired up to play Rice as they were Miami?
Right.
No, they weren't. It's still about so it's about Notre Dame fed off the energy on Saturday. But you know what? Notre Dame came out pretty fired up to play against Ohio State too. Vince, we were there. We saw it. That team was physically and emotionally ready to play.
Absolutely.
They didn't execute. This team was also mentally focused and ready to play. The difference is this team executed and played with better technique in key positions now that they've been under the new coaches for a longer period of time.
Yep.
You know, and I'd love to say, hey, if you could put this team back then, but that's not how the reality works.
That's not how it goes.
The question isn't, will they have the same energy? The question is, will they have the same focus? Right. That's the key. They will not be able to match the intensity because, Vince, I think you nailed it too. The environment won't be the same.
Oh my gosh. We brought up a couple of other games and things that were similar environment. I will still say this is the best environment that I can remember since I've been covering the team in 2004. Yeah. I mean, that was just electric. Like, and part of it was the wind, but part of it was the crowd. Like, you could feel it in the press box. And that's not the case, man. I'm telling you. And from everybody I talked to that was at the game, people were standing the whole time. You could see the fans in some of the pictures and some of the video just cupped mouth, screaming their heads off. I mean, you just don't see that at Notre Dame, man. Yeah. I'm telling you, the atmosphere was electric. It was awesome.
Yeah. And kids feed off that.
Yes.
Yes. They feed off that. All right, let's get to these next questions here. We have a few more before we get out of here. Kevin Fetters with a super chat. Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate what you guys do. Awesome atmosphere last night. Team and fans showed up. It was funny. I was kind of joking my dad a little bit today because, you know, my dad's 66, my mom's 65, and they were at the game last night. My dad was like, well, the only thing bad about last night's game is nobody would sit down. And I'm like, dude, Dad, you can't be that guy.
Don't be that guy.
He's like, no, I understand. He goes, but I'm 66 years old. You know what I mean? Like, but they stood, but thing is,
funny though,
they didn't tell others to sit down.
Exactly.
You know, they would sit down and they would look at the scoreboard, and you know, if they needed to sit down, they would sit down, look at the scoreboard, and see what happened because the scoreboard now plays it, and
of course,
they let people do what they do. So it wasn't like that, but it was just kind of funny. I was busting my dad's chops a bit. Come on, man, like, you know what I mean? Like, you can't be that guy. And my mom was just laughing.
That's great.
But they loved it. I mean, my dad was at 17 USC. My dad was at 2018 Michigan. So he's been at some of those. I mean, Michigan 2018 was loud, Vince. That place was rocking. And he said he thinks that last night was the loudest he's seen.
Yeah.
He thinks it was. I've heard from people that have gone back to like the early 2000s, and then the only game that anyone has ever said that had more energy and noise was 05 USC. Right. It's the only one. That's it. And you said that last night too, didn't you, Vince?
Yeah, that's the one I brought up. I mean, it was loud and it was exciting then, but maybe I was younger and the sound didn't affect me as much. I don't know.
But I also think it was more back and forth. And when Reggie goes off on a long play, it's going to quiet the crowd down.
Sure. The crowd was loud.
Yeah.
All night.
Right. When Fasano catches that seam route and the crowd gets loud because they think, and then he gets stripped, and those things are going to quiet the crowd. Last night, like you said it tonight, Notre Dame controlled action from start to finish.
Oh, yes.
There was no USC moment or Clemson moments that quieted the crowd. It was just intense from stop to finish.
Yeah.
I mean, it was start to finish, and you love it. It was so much fun to be. It was a great environment. Great environment.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody said this: Notre Dame was literally flagged for being too loud against Michigan in '88. I remember seeing that. I remember that was a thing.
At that game.
Yeah, that was a thing back in the day. You couldn't be so loud. I thought that was dumb.
Ridiculous.
Yep. John Keevers with a super chat. John said, shout out to the guy at my nephew's CYO championship game today wearing my IB hat, and he stopped me to shout out Irish Breakdown. Great community. That is awesome.
CYO.
That is awesome. How about the guy that we saw walking in, and he was like, hey, Brian, and then he saw you. Oh, it's Vince.
I know.
That was pretty cool.
Somebody came up to me at my daughter's basketball game today, and he goes, Irish Breakdown? He goes, Vince? I was like, yeah, man. And we talked for like 5 minutes.
We have a great community, man. I love y'all. It's been so much fun. Tom Frowley with a super chat. Tom, thank you very much. Brian and Vince, thanks for all you do. I continue to tell all my Notre Dame fanatics that your coverage of Notre Dame is the best. We appreciate that very much. Thank you for the super chat, and thanks for spreading the word.
Yeah,
tell those folks they need to start listening too. I think they'll like it. Go Irish with a super sticker. Thank you very, very much. We appreciate that. Ashley Hill had a super chat. Thank you, Ashley, and also had a follow-up question to go with that. Ashley said, "How did you drink to celebrate? How much did you drink to celebrate?" I had a Mountain Dew last night for the game. Honestly, Ashley, I'm trying to cut back a little bit on Mountain Dew and to eventually where I'm kind of weaning myself. I tried to do cold turkey last week, Vince. That lasted about a day and a half. And I was like, no, cold turkey ain't for me, at least not right now.
Yeah.
But it's funny. When I celebrate, like I don't normally like partake of things when I celebrate.
Right.
The only time I ever have when I was at Muhlenberg in 2002, we beat Moravian to win our league championship, and we kind of had a feeling we were going to get in the playoff. We finished that year 9-1, and I think we won our league championship. I believe we co-champs, and best season in school history and all that kind of stuff. And we went out that night, and my head coach, Coach Donnelly, had cigars, and my dad was in town for the game, and I'd never smoked a cigar before, so we had cigars to celebrate that. That's the only time I've ever done something like to celebrate. Just my thing is I want to talk about it. That's why I wanted to jump on the show. I love talking about
being
it.
on the show because if Notre Dame would have lost, it'd have been like, oh, internet's not out or the internet's out.
Oh shoot. I would not have been on the show last night if Notre Dame lost.
I had a built-in excuse to not be on the show last night, and I found a way, my friends, a way because I needed to talk about that show.
No doubt. Blake Kajar, Notre Dame LSU Sugar Bowl game. Let's go. I've had a lot of people bring that up, Vince, and I'm not going to talk too much about it other than yes, please.
I mean, I've never been to New Orleans, so
yes, please.
Sign me up. Let's go.
For so many reasons, yes, please.
I know, right?
Potatoes O'Brien with a super chat. I honestly did not. Thank you, Potatoes O'Brien. I honestly did not expect us to run on Clemson for 200+ yards. You and me both, partner.
No way.
Unless there was like a 90-yard touchdown, that kind of late in the game. Yes, right. Yeah, but their longest run was 20 yards.
Yes.
I'm glad I was wrong. Me too.
Me too. Oh,
Huge respect to these kids for not falling apart and keep grinding. Beat SC. Glad to see there it wasn't too much orange. Yeah, I mean there was a lot of orange relative to most home games, but I didn't think it was. I was actually like,
it wasn't crazy. Not that bad. It was probably 10%, maybe a little more. Like it was obviously in their section, right? But then it was just kind of peppered in around. Like it wasn't bad.
Right.
It really wasn't bad at all. And we had a question in the rapid fire in the pregame show, Sean and I, and it was, do you think Notre Dame's going to go over 150 yards rushing? And I said, if they go over 150 yards rushing, I think they're going to win the game.
And they went way over.
Way over. Like
they almost doubled that up. I mean, they weren't that far from doubling that up.
Yeah.
That
was awesome. I mean, there's no other way to put it. I didn't see over 200 coming. If we put the over under at 200, I was like, no way. There's no way that's going to happen.
Yeah.
Come on. That's ridiculous.
I thought 200 might have been possible because Florida State got 200.
Sure.
But I just been a stretch. It would have needed a big yard. It would have needed a big play. Like Tyree's going to go for 60 or something like that. Right.
I just figured it would be such a point of emphasis for Clemson to shut down Notre Dame's run.
Yeah. Vince, I would have thought it would have needed like Lindsey gets free on a reverse.
Sure.
Or Tyree. I mean, it would have needed a big play to get to 200.
It didn't have that.
It didn't happen.
Was nuts.
It didn't happen. It was amazing. But yes, Potatoes, I appreciate that. I'm going to tell you what. Somebody said in the chat last night, and huge kudos to Marcus Freeman because that team was petering on the brink of disaster. We were hearing stuff about locker room issues and coaching staff issues, and the fan base was revolting. Fire Marcus Freeman. He was in over his head. He never should have been hired in the first place. You should have hired insert coach that person thought they should have hired the first time. And he doesn't have the experience to be this or that or the other thing. And he stepped up. He got his coaching staff on the same page. He kind of got his players, hey, who do you want to be? And this team I said it last night and I'll say it again, Vince, and this is how we'll leave it tonight. When you look at this football team and you say, if you have only watched Notre Dame from UNLV on, you're thinking this is no question a top 10 football team, if not top 5.
Yeah.
And you're thinking if only they had a passing game, they could win it all. I mean, that's how they've played the last 3 weeks.
And
they're
this is how
not
we
that
thought
team.
they were going to play.
And they're not that team because you're not a 3-week stretch of who you are. You're an entire season. We're not saying that, I mean, they get the play. No, you are who you are over the course of an entire season.
Yeah.
Are they hot right now? Yes. My point is simply this, Vince, is the fact that they can be that team after what happened against Stanford and all the issues that came from that says a lot about this coaching staff's ability to rally the troops together. And at the top of that is Marcus Freeman.
Yeah.
He got the blame when they lost to Marshall. And you just listen to him after that game. He even admitted it last week. Like, I didn't have a lot of answers at that point in time. And after Stanford, he had some answers. And he stepped up and he got this program going. And boy, has it been fun to watch. It has been really fun to watch.
Yep.
That's going to do it for tonight's show, everybody. We're going to get out of here. We'll be back tomorrow. Sean and Ryan will wrap up at 1 o'clock tomorrow. We'll wrap up the recruiting weekend. A lot of news and intel. There's a lot of intel on the board tonight. You'll definitely want to check that out that Ryan's put up on at the message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. Definitely want to sign up for that. We'll have some more coming out here soon when we're able to put some of the intel out. So we'll definitely have more of that. So you want to sign up. And then tomorrow night at 6 o'clock, Vince and Jesse will be together. Sean Stires will not be there because Sean is doing play-by-play for the women's basketball team who kick off their season tomorrow.
Correct.
So that'll be fun to see. Who do they play? They play No, that was the men's basketball team. That
Southern Illinois or
something like that.
I'm not 100% sure.
So Sean will be doing that. So Jesse and Vince will fill in for that. And then Tuesday, we're going to have some different shows, but we're not quite sure how it's going to go. I've got to talk to the staff. We may push our show back. We may do like only 2 shows, but like have our show start later, then have the college football playoff one. There's a lot of stuff we're working on.
Yeah.
And, because it is election day and I'm a big believer in making sure that my people have the time that they need to go vote. I'm one of those people that believes that election day should be a national holiday where people should be off of work for the most part and those kind of things like Vince is. But so my team will definitely have the time to go vote if they so choose. That is their right to choose to vote or not. And so we just got to figure out our schedule and get everybody on the same page. We'll let you guys know. We'll have it figured out by tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'll let you guys know. But we'll have at least 2 shows on Tuesday night because one thing I do know for a fact, Vince, we're going live for the college football playoff reaction show.
Absolutely.
Yep. There's no doubt.
Absolutely.
So we do expect Notre Dame to be in it. I think they were probably a borderline team last week. And now with the win over Clemson and some of the other losses that happened in front of them, I do fully expect Notre Dame to be in the top 25. I think the question is how high do they jump in?
Yeah.
I think that's going to be the
It'll
question.
be very interesting to see what the College Football Playoff Committee thinks of Notre Dame. And generally, they think highly of Notre Dame. What do they think? What do they put their emphasis on? The losses or the wins?
Right.
We're going to get
last week they put it on the losses.
I agree.
Not the wins.
And that's not good for Notre Dame.
Yes. Well, they'll still be in the top 25.
Absolutely. But where are they going to fall?
Right. But I think if you're trying to pump up Ohio State, now all of a sudden you have a good reason to put Notre Dame up there because Ohio State's resume is looking a little shaky right now compared to some of the other teams.
Yeah.
Even as an undefeated team. So I think that would help Ohio State in that regard as well. So that's going to do it for us. Mace AK had this up here. Let's pull that up. Mace has got it going on. Join the message board, everybody, at boards.irishbreakdown.com. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, share this podcast, leave a 5-star review. Visit the IB store for the best merch, sweats, hats, hoodies, t-shirts, we even have onesies, right? We even have onesies. You definitely want to check that out. If you're not a board member and you sign up for a monthly membership, you will then get a 10% off discount to your entire next store purchase. And if you sign up for an annual membership, you get a 20% discount to your entire next store purchase. So definitely take advantage. And as Mace says, as always, Vince, go Irish. Thanks, everybody, for being with us on the Irish Breakdown Podcast. Have a great night. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.